بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نرحب بكم في إحدى الأمسيات الخاصة بفعاليات أكاديمية نسيج. وأكاديمية نسيج لمن يريد التعرف أكثر عليها، هذا العام نكمل عامنا الخامس كمبادرة غير ربحية. هي بدأت منذ عام 2015، والهدف الأساسي منها هو كان محاولة دعم وتطوير القيادات العاملة في مجال المعرفة، وهي انطلقت من نسيج كفكرة مجتمعية بالأساس. ومنذ هذا التاريخ وهي تقدم العديد من الأنشطة والفعاليات والمنح لخدمة المجتمع العربي العام في مجال المعرفة والمكتبات والمعلومات. وأمسيتنا اليوم تتناول موضوع أتصور أنه يشغل كثير من الباحثين والأكاديميين والمكتبيين العرب، ويقينا أن النشر، خاصة النشر العلمي، هو الشغل الشاغل لكثير من الجامعات، ليس فقط حرصا من الجامعة على الاعتماد الأكاديمي أو على الارتقاء في سلم القياسات الخاصة بالجانب الأكاديمي أو ما بين الجانب التنافسي ما بين الجامعات المختلفة، ولكن أيضا حرصا من الباحثين على وجود نقطة لهم تحت شمس المعرفة العالمية. وإذا كنا نحن في العالم العربي نفكر في الوجود الخاص بنا على الجانب العلمي، وكما نرى في الإحصائيات أن هناك نمو متزايد في الجوانب الخاصة بالنشر في جميع الدول العربية، فإن هناك عدد من الممكنات والركائز التي تساعد على إيجاد هذا السبوت، إنجاز التعبير، للباحثين العرب والجامعات بشكل عام، حتى يستطيعوا أن ينشروا بحوثهم وأعمالهم الأكاديمية ومقالاتهم. وتتنوع هذه المقدمات ما بين المالية والأكاديمية والبشرية والمجتمعية والمعرفية والتقنية. فنجد أن كثير من الجامعات حاليا ترصد مكافآت وأنماط للدعم الخاصة بالبحث العلمي، وخاصة لمن ينشر في الجامعات في المجلات العلمية العالمية، والتي سوف نتحدث عنها اليوم بتفصيل مع خبيرتنا. وهذه الفرص تنعكس أيضا على مكانة الباحثين، وكما نرى أن هناك كثير من الباحثين أصبحوا اليوم في الصفوف الأمامية ما بين الباحثين العالميين، سواء مصر أو السعودية أو الإمارات أو كثير من الدول العربية. وأيضا الجوانب المعرفية كممكنات نجدها أصبحت بالإضافة إلى التقنية متاحة لباحثين، وتجعلهم أيضا في المصاف لنا شريطة أن يستخدموها بشكل فعال، وأيضا بشكل يمكنهم من نشر هذه البحوث على نطاق أوسع. من هذا المنطلق فكرنا كأكاديمية نسيج في ماذا يدور في خلد الباحثين والأكاديميين والمكتبيين أيضا الذين يسعون إلى النشر. أتصور أن التساؤل الذي يدور في الذهن هو: لدي الإمكانيات والممكنات ولدي الفكرة المبدعة، ماذا يحول بيني وبين أن أنشر في المجلات العالمية ذات الإمباكت فاكتور، المعامل التأثير العالي، ومن فئة الQ1 وQ2؟ ماذا يجعل الهيئات التحرير في هذه المجلات تتوقف لبعض الوقت أمام ما نرسله، وقد تقبله وقد لا تقبله؟ من هذا المنطلق فكرنا التواصل مع البروفيسورة مارتا ديرب، وهي أستاذ في جامعة سون في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، ورئيسة لهيئة التحرير في مجلة Journal of Archival Organization، وأيضا مسؤولة التحرير في قسم التزويد بالمجلات التي تصدر عن الجمعية الأمريكية، جمعية المكتبات الأمريكية. وأترك لها المجال بعد هذه المقدمة لأن تعرف بنفسها وتبدأ معنا هذه الندوة العلمية. Professor Marta, this is just a brief introduction to Naseej Academy and also introduction to the needs from our side in the Arab region for you as an expert to tell us the key of publishing smoothly and efficiently in the cutting-edge journal in library information science. So I leave the stage for you. Please introduce yourself in your words, Professor Marta.
Thank you very much, Dr. Metwelly. Well, my name, as you know, is Marta Deyrup. I'm an outreach and humanities librarian at Seton University's libraries, which is located in the state of New Jersey in the United States. As you heard from Professor Abdallah, I'm currently the editor of the Archival Organization and Acquisitions Editor for the LITA Guide series published by ALA and by Littlefield. I have actually been in publishing for almost all my career in addition to being in the library field. So I've watched it change over time from being a print-based business. Academic publishing was very slowly done to a very dynamic kind of publishing, which includes many different forms of journals, such as electronic journals, open access journals, all sorts of hybrid forms. So it's been a very exciting industry to watch and to follow and to take part in. I'm going to try to share with you today the secrets or the knowledge that I have learned over the period of time that I have served jointly as an editor and as a librarian, the two professors together, and I hope that they'll be of use to you. I'm going to very briefly just mention my book, which came out a little while ago. It's called The Librarian's Guide to Publishing. It very recently was picked up by a publisher here in Saudi Arabia, so it will be published in a version here, which I'm very grateful and happy about. Okay, what is the point of this workshop? It's to provide you with practical information so you can prepare an article for a leading LSI journals, usually one with a factor of Q1 or Q2. As you know, there are 4 different categories of for LSI journals in this way of organizing them. One is Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. Each one takes a quarter of that amount, the total amount. So we'll take a look at that, what makes something relevant and will be accepted by a Q1 and Q2 journal. And then at the same time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you really through a very, almost like a crash course, very not crash course, where I'm going to talk about fundamentals. For example, how you find a topic for your article, how you should structure your journal article, how to follow the editorial guidelines, and finally, how to minimize the potential of your manuscript being rejected. I think actually in publishing, as in many other fields, if you follow the rules, you follow the structure, you should be able to come up with something that's really quite good. But you have to follow along with what is expected of you. I think that's what I would have to. Today, we're going to have an introduction again to journal publishing, and also a discussion of the challenges and the rewards of publication. You may feel when you're actually writing that it's all about challenges and nothing about rewards. But you'll find, you know, when you have something published, and many of you already are well-known scholars and writers, that it's extremely satisfying to get your point of view, what you have to say, your knowledge out to others, and to have others comment and engage with you in a scholarly conversation, because that's really what scholarship is about. It's engaging in a conversation. We'll end up at the end of this lecture or conversation with a Q&A field. I know there are quite a lot of you right now, so we're not going to take the time to do this, but we'll go right through to the end, and then we'll begin another discussion among ourselves. Okay, I'd mentioned earlier the Q index, and you may ask yourself, what is a Q journal? And a Q index defines the rank of a journal in a specific field. So the field may be library and information science, it may be English literature, it might be Islamic literature, it might be anything. The definition of it, not what I'm trying to say, not the definitions, but the categories that make up each of these different journals in the different fields are different from each other. So every Q1 journal in library and information science does not have the same, totally the same criteria as though in other fields. I have down here, you'll get at the end of this discussion, this lecture, a bunch of information that you can go and explore yourself. And I've also put on the PowerPoint some of the web links that you can go to. So for example, ResearchGate here at the bottom has a very excellent, very good explanation of the Q index and the rankings in it. Okay, this is one thing where if I have again a link for you to go to. This is the Elsevier ranking system, and you can see that it's very interesting because part of it is done. It's done by a certain amount of points. So it's whether journal articles have appeared, how many have appeared in a journal over a period of years, how many of them have are set on a certain topic and so forth, how many have been cited. So it's a way of trying to look at journal articles and judge them, give them criteria that is basically transparent and that makes sense, that it's not an arbitrary method of doing it. So again, if you go to the Elsevier site, you can get a good sense of what makes up those journal rankings. One of the things that I think is actually quite important when you're doing an article for any kind of journal is that you don't look at it as an academic exercise, that you're not simply trying to go and look at something that's just very stiff and not interesting. What you want to do is comment on what's happening. I think in any field that's the kind of excitement that you get from writing and from doing different topics. Right now, because academic librarianship, and in fact all forms of librarianship is changing so dramatically, there are different topics that are right now in the forefront. So if we look at college and research library news, which I'm sure you've looked at, you've seen, for 2020, the top trends in academic libraries are change management or new skills for new leadership. So that's the idea that we're right now in a very transitionary phase, that it's very unclear and unsettled what is going to happen. And so we need to go and look back, go with our colleagues and kind of come up with a new way of new skills for leadership that will help take some of the stress away from the people that we work with and lead them in the right direction. That is a very popular topic right now, which of course it should be, especially with COVID-19 and everything that's happening. Another popular topic or important topic is involving integrated library systems. As library systems are bought out by different companies and combined, you get changes in the technical functions of them. And so what's happening with that is of key importance. Learning analytics, machine learning and artificial intelligence, open access, which has been a topic for a number of years now, and how it's transforming publishing. Open access research data services, about the ethics of what's published, what is real news, what is fake news. And then right now, especially since we're right now in the grips of COVID-19, there are new disciplines that are really emerging, at least in American librarianship, which are topics of social justice, critical digital pedagogy, critical librarianship, all things that have to do with what's happening right now within society. And the last topic we have here is streaming media. And so you can see that this is, I just took this from the top 2010s, but if you look at them, this is an enormous group of topics, of themes that if any of them interest you, these are what is being published, which are thought of right now as being the important themes in journals. Okay, so we've just put here for you, you can see this, again, this is from College and Research Libraries News. You can see that it's really, this is the article, so you're welcome to go. College and Research Libraries News is an open access journal. It's open access on the web. So this is a review of the trends and issues affecting academic libraries and higher education, and you can go and take a look at it. One thing that's interesting about College and Research Libraries News is that every year it puts out a new list. So you can go back actually in time and see what they feel are the most important topics that are being written about, and you can see whether you agree or not. I think one of the things about being an editor, again, right now I'm the editor of the Journal of Archival Organization, is to see from different countries, from different traditions, how very different the subjects are, the themes are, the topics. They're not all the same. And I think that's actually, we'll talk about that later, but that's one of the difficulties when you publish for another journal in another country, is to go and actually feel out what is of interest to that particular editorial group, the people who are going to read it. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So this would be something that I would, if I wanted to write about something that was featured in the 2020 top trends in college and research library news, that would be interesting to read. If I wrote it, what would be of interest to others? What I'd do is I'd go through that article, and I would actually go through and circle the topics, the themes, the ideas, just to get a sense from them what they feel are the most important topics to take a look at. The next thing I would do would be to give my project a title. And I think that's always easier when you're beginning a writing project, that you don't want to just go in there and kind of start looking aimlessly. You want to have a structure to what do you want to write about? What is of interest to you? And I would put that as the title. You think of 1 or 2 keywords and maybe a short abstract that describe the project. And working on an exercise sheet, fill in column A with this info. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to show you what I would do with something like this. An article that I actually, for the top 20 trends, I was not aware of probably half of them, that's what is considered to be the top. So what I would do is I would do an analysis of that article. Okay, the next thing I would do once I did a kind of an overall analysis of the topic, what's of interest to me, what I want to write about, is I actually would do something very interesting, I think very different, is I would look at the number of pages I would feel each section of my article would take up. And why would I do that? It's another way of organizing your thoughts for you. You might have a section that you would feel would be very important on change management, and then another section on another form of relations with employees, whatever. But I would try to do a brief overview where I put that into just like an outline form. I think it's very helpful before you even begin to try to figure out in advance what are the most important topics, what is of interest to you, and look at it this way. Okay, so let's go one more, and we'll take a look at the actual sheet. Okay, so what I would do is I would have a column A and a column B after going through that article we just looked at that has all the different types of changes in librarianship and over the year. And I would put here a title, so maybe I would put, maybe I would be interested in doing something about library internships. So, and how they're helping students get the skills they need to go and get jobs that are becoming more technical. That might be something of interest. So title, library interns, key to our future maybe, keywords, library interns, education, library education, and so forth, and abstract. This article will look at how library internship has changed over the past X number of years. We will take a look at the new skills that library students are learning in order to get ahead, something like that. Now the total number of pages. Okay, an article is usually between, I don't know, let's say 25 and 40 pages, right? So what I would do here is I would try to figure out for this particular article, what am I really interested in writing about? So maybe I'd give the conclusion and the conclusion maybe 3 pages. The central thesis would be 20. The literature review, maybe there would be a lot or a little, and I would just fill in the total of number of the pages. Why would I do that? Well, one of the things that I like to do when I write is to give myself a word deadline for the different sections of it and just write till I get to that deadline and then stop. I can go back through it later. But to me, that's a very good way of motivating yourself. If you have in your mind's eye how you want the article laid out, what you need to do, you can also then take it apart and go to different components of that. You don't have to do it one after the other. You can do it, separately. And I think that that's helpful. Anything that you can kind of get yourself away from being too close to the article you're writing is also very positive. Okay, journal publishers. I said that in the beginning, journal publishers writing for articles for magazines and library journals have changed dramatically over the time that I've been in the profession. A lot of it has to do with open access really, and also just the electronicization of data, of information, which has radically changed the number of journals, the numbers of ways that we communicate. Okay, these are some examples of journal publishers. We have commercial publishers, like IGI Global, ASZAD, Elsevier, and so forth. These are all names that you probably know, and you're probably very well aware of the kind of articles that each one of them publishes. These are publishers, but each journal usually has a different message to it. It has a different point of view. It has different kinds of articles that it's right. Some have columns, some have book reviews, some have, I mean, they're all sorts of different ways. So when you're writing, you're taking your piece that you've written, you want to think about very carefully about which one of all these journals it would fit the best into. You don't want to say, I only want to go to college and research libraries. That's it. No, you look at what you're writing and then you go and judge what's out there that you can work with and go and take a look. One thing that I found with library science, writing for library science, is that it's a very open, actually very positive field that's unlike other academic disciplines. For example, in my other life, my field, I'm a Slavist. I have my doctorate in Slavic languages and literatures. For my journals, I have 2 that I can contribute to, and maybe they get 300 articles a year, of which they publish 10. Librarianship is an expanding field with a lot of ideas. People want to exchange information, peer review, non-peer review. So go and take a look at the journal article, the journal that fits the most what you want to do, and proceed from there. Okay, there are society publishers. There are library associations like ALA, ITEL, Reference and User Services. Library publishers, libraries have become their own kind of publishers with e-repositories. They're publishing the journals and books of their faculty that they have there. They're publishing dissertations and theses. So that's another way that you could publish, just really an independent publisher. And open access publishers, which are, you know, one of the most interesting trends I think that has come out in publishing in recent years, where the idea of publishing is that it's really about sharing knowledge, right? That's the core of it, rather than about getting paid or getting, you know, you're doing it because you want to give back to others, to continue the conversation. I think right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see whether this works, and if not, Professor Abdallah, maybe you can do this for me, or Saeed. This is Directive of Open Access Journals, and if you go down to the bottom, there is the address, and let's just see if we can get to it from here. If we can't, that's fine. I just thought we might bring it up and take a look at what some of these open access journals are. So sure. This is the directory of open access journals. Again, it's kind of a mega site. It's a repository of citations, really. So it's, as it says here, it's a community curated online directory that indexes and provides access to high quality open access peer-reviewed journals. So, okay, the 3 things that are important there, that they're high quality. They're open access, which means anybody can read them, and they're peer-reviewed. That's one of the things that's really stopped in the past open access journals, because they were not peer-reviewed. So after doing all that work, especially if you were in an academic environment and you need tenure and so forth, you know, you'd be crazy to go and do all that work and publish in an open access journal, which is not peer-reviewed. But that's no longer the case. And journals are becoming more and more open access in their format. I think that's encouraged by the sciences, at least here in the US, where if you the government has contributed to your project, you are required in many cases to publish in an open access format, to put it in your e-repositories, your data at least. So that's important. And it's something that I know from working with ALA, with the various journals that I'm involved with, something that really, as a philosophical viewpoint, is really important to them to have open access. And I think all those societies are going to eventually just go to that as a format. because it is really not really fair to have journals which have information that's been paid for by a university, the government, whatever, that then is locked down to only certain readers. Definitions of gold and green open access. So there are two types of open access, major ones. One is called gold open access, which is the business model is that subscribers pay for the journal, they subscribe to it. And gold open access is where individuals for which there are authors or their authors' institutions pay a specific fee for publication, often referred to as a processing charge. So for some journals, I will ask my administration if they will pay the amount of money that the journal's asking to publish it. So we'll still go through peer review, it'll go through all those forms, but the writer is contributing to the actual publication. So that's one form. Another one is green open access, which is the practice of depositing articles in an open access repository. Green open access journal publishers endorse immediate open access self-archiving by their authors. So what that means is that you'll have them in the journal, your article, but you also can keep it in your own repository, either your own or belonging to your university. What's actually very interesting about that, if you look at we have an e-repository, and the amount of hits on individual articles is simply astounding. So you know that as far as reaching an audience, if you can put your journal, your article twice in an e-repository and in a peer-reviewed journal or whatever way, it's only to your favor. And I'm becoming more and more convinced of that as we're going along. But you really want exposure. Exposure is one of the major reasons that you're writing in our conversation, right? We want to have a conversation. Choosing the right journal for early career researchers. Okay, this is a link, but I don't think we need to go to this. What it's really, the focus of this is on picking a journal that is right for the work that you have done. One of the things that this particular report does is it gets into predatory publishers. Predatory publishing is where an entity essentially tricks you into publishing with them, promising all sorts of things, and then eventually not delivering them. I don't know really why, what's the point of this predatory publishing. I don't know why people would actually go along with it unless they really felt the need to publish, because since you have so many ways of self-publishing. But this is an interesting report to read, especially if you're in the early part of your career, about where you should publish. What would be the most helpful for your career? So again, this is a very interesting report that you can take a look at and read yourself and become familiar with. I think it's actually very interesting, the idea of the right journal for your publication. I had mentioned that just a little while back, but it's so crucially important that you be very kind of savvy about where you want to publish. First of all, you can ask yourself, what is the journal that would do the most for your reputation, right? I'm sure within your field, you have your subfield of librarianship, or your own niche in librarianship. You have journals that are very important for what you do and others that are not so important. So you want to, again, pick a journal. That would be one of the reasons for it. Another way you would want to pick a journal is to take a look at the articles that have been written in the journal. Go to a database where it's indexed, and go through for the past maybe 3 or 4 years and just get a sense of what the editor-in-chief is interested in publishing. And I say editor-in-chief because although, it's sort of what is it called? That this is what the journal publishes, this blah, blah, blah. What's really of interest is what the person who's really picking it is the editor-in-chief. And the editor-in-chief is like any other person, has things that he or she likes tremendously and things that he or she does not like. So if you go through the titles of maybe 3 years of articles, you will get a sense of what that editor-in-chief likes to publish, what he or she feels is important to publish. And you can say to yourself while you're going through maybe several of these journals to see what people are writing about, what you want to write about. And you say, gosh, this is really like my article. There were three different articles about library internships in some form. I'm not going to put my apply to this journal to look at my work because it's already been published. That's another thing you want to do is if an article has been published on your topic fairly recently, the editor will not pick the topic, no matter if it's fabulous. This is my opinion, because in a journal, you want everything to be fresh and new and part of a larger conversation. And if you publish the same type of article, the same topic year after year, it would become very dull and very stale. So that's one thing you can think about when you're starting out. I think also when you are starting out, the best thing is to look at what you know and to try to write from your own experience or things that you understand. I would not write, sometimes writers like to write an editor and ask whether they would be interested in X or Y topic. And I would say, don't bother to do that. The editor will probably say, will look at it and say, well, I'm not really interested in this topic, but what if the person writes a fantastic article? I'll have missed out on it. I mean, that's what I certainly would do. So I would be I wouldn't go and look to the editor for advice on how to write your article. I would look to your colleagues, to your supervisors about writing the article itself, and I would take a look at what articles are like yours so that you can look at them as a model. Okay, we have also new places that we can publish. They are new media. They're blogs, for example, which often take on the form of a kind of real publication because they're word-centered, they're text-centered. And here's an example. If you go, blogs also have quite a lot of information. So if you go to this particular one, a library writer's blog, you can see that it provides publishing opportunities and presentation opportunities. So I would go and I would bookmark this and just see what conferences are around, what people are writing about. They have a call for papers of 2021 researcher and so forth and so on. The scholarly writing process. Okay. What we're all doing is a form of scholarly writing. And the scholarly writing process is similar to really any kind of academic writing process, where you have a period of pre-writing, where you do brainstorming, you come up with a concept map, you do an outline, you organize it, an activity report, a Gantt chart. You do research, interviews, surveys, bibliographic research. You write a first, second, and third draft, and you share results with colleagues. So it's really kind of like a loop. You come up, you brainstorm, you have some ideas, you get those ideas organized, which is what we were just doing in the last couple of slides, previous slides. Once you've organized what you want to write about, you go do the research on it. According to the format that you've picked, you will pick surveys, interviews, whatever is right for that particular article. You're going to write several drafts and you're going to share the results with colleagues and get feedback. Always do that before you publish anything, because you'll be surprised at what you've left out and how others can contribute to your own work. Basic types of LIS peer-reviewed articles. There are only a few types of articles, and they're really done by subject area. And if you don't believe me, take this list of topics of types of articles and go flip through some academic journals and see if you can find which one is an empirical study, a thesis study, a compare and contrast study, and so forth. Okay, in my opinion, there are 4 major types of articles, and they all have to do with structure. One of them is an empirical study. It's a study in which a researcher collects and analyzes data. A thesis study, where a researcher begins with a hypothesis, which he or she then either proves or disproves. A compare and contrast article, comparing 2 topics, demonstrating similarities and differences between them. And a case study, which focuses on one particular example, which can then be generalized. Okay, again, so you have only a few types of articles. It all has to do with structure. One is empirical. One is a thesis, proving a thesis or not. One is compare and contrast, comparing and contrasting 2 topics. A case study, looking at something in detail. And if you can get your mind kind of to think in this way, and you're starting an article, again, maybe our internship one, and you could say, you know, this is for me either a compare and contrast article or a case study. It's a case study if I want just talk about one group of library interns and their experience, but maybe I want to do a compare and contrast where I look at things in different places, different time periods, different countries. I could do that. Or I could actually go and do a thesis. I could have a hypothesis saying what library interns are doing works or does not work, and so forth and so on. So always keep that in mind, that you have to structure your article around some kind of a thematic topic. Okay, article examples. Okay, in your packet, what you're going to have is a variety of articles, some articles which you can go and use. They accompany this talk, and so when you look at them, you'll remember hopefully what we were talking about, and then see whether you agree or not with the analysis. Okay, I'm going to put in two, which I'd like you actually to flip to the next page. This is the abstract of an article from the Serials Librarian, but I've put two in your packet, which are good examples because they're so well laid out with an introduction, a literature review, and so forth. And I'd like you to go through there and actually look at that section by section and try if you can figure out, not try, you will figure out what's the difference between all the sections, why do they follow in the form they do, and so forth.
Yeah,
Yes.
if you allow me, Professor Marta, to just share with the attendees these two articles, we will send them to each one over his email, the attendees mainly, so he can just practice on it, all the suggestion or the advices that you will listed here. So just to clarify. Also, one more note here, all the comments and questions that already I can see it here, we will just postpone it at the end of the presentation, and I will share it with Professor Marta to answer it. And also, if there is someone just having a question in Arabic, well, you are welcome just to write it in Arabic and I will translate it. And the most important thing, and I supposed to mention this at the beginning, but I mentioned it in the flyer of the presentation and of the workshop. All the workshop will be in English. This is one of the benefits just to support our attitudes to write to this international journal. So I think this is good experience, but still open for any comment or any questions that will come to us, to the Academy, or to Professor Marta, to help you all to publish it there. Sorry for interruption, but this is, I think, important to share it with the attendees. Okay,
So the two articles that are included in your will be sent to you via email. One is about ERM workflows and Serials Librarians, and the other one is about complex publishing trends. And you can see that the ERM workflows is probably an article about, I haven't actually thought about it, you know, which you would put it into, but it's probably one that's about a specific circumstance. The next one is about trends. So you can see right away that within a case study, the first one, and trends, which is maybe an analytical one, you would have a very different structure. And you would start your writing with that in mind, that you would have a different structure to, and you know, that's what really you're looking at. These things are templates, right? Okay, which section should you start first? Okay, what I've done here, you can see that these are actually in the order that they would appear in a journal. Introduction, overview, literature review, main body analysis, conclusion, and references. I'm sorry. So what this would be is, even though that it's in this particular order that it will appear in the journal, you actually want to do them at different times. You would like to do, what I would do first is I would do the literature review and the references together as my first project. Then I would go after that and write the overview. I would never start by writing the introduction or the overview before I actually did my research. So you would do then overview, main body and analysis, that's the bulk of your work, and then do the introduction and the conclusion last. I would never start with an introduction first or a conclusion, because that would direct my entire project rather than me trying to find out what's really happening. there often when you're writing, it's actually very different. What's very difficult is the transitions to go from one paragraph or one idea to another. So I think it's good to have in your mind different phrases, stock phrases that you can use that will help you with those transitions. You can always go and change them later. So you're talking about one thing, right? You can say in your next paragraph, now I turn to the question, 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D. You could do it that way. As for these 173 individuals who subscribed, so as for these people, but for the others, no. A second approach to building a collective of participating. Okay, so these are all things, while this article seeks to demonstrate something else happened. So if you can come up with, think through those kind of transitional phrases that are helpful for you, and just help them when you're doing the outline even, or the first draft. It will help you move your paragraphs so that they flow together. Okay, that's true again. We talked about this just the last slide, but paragraphs are the building blocks of any piece of writing. Okay, let's hear that again. Paragraphs are the building blocks of any piece of writing and can easily be placed from one part of your manuscript to another. If you're writing it in terms of blocks of text, of paragraphs, you can go and move them around. If they seem like they're not working in a certain order, change them. But you need to do them as blocks of text to make that happen. As we just saw on the last slide, ideas are connected by transitional phrases and conjunctions. So to go from one paragraph to another, you can use, at least in English, words like therefore, then, for example, first, second, third, on the other hand, and so forth. Those are all things of ways of saying on the one hand, but then on the other, or this happened and next would happen that. So those transitional phrases, at least in English, are very important. Okay, building a portfolio of work. I think it's very important that when you do any kind of writing, you think of what you want to get out of it. You know, writing is a practical skill, and you want to do it to get some kind of reward, right? At least to be, you want the reward maybe to be published in a peer-reviewed journal. But I always try to think larger than that. I think because I came from publishing into librarianship, I had the idea that this was a skill that could help me advance myself in a new profession. So when I do at least I don't do this now, but when I was beginning, I said to myself, why are you doing this? Are you writing to obtain a promotion? I sure was. I was on a tenure track job. So if I didn't write, I wasn't going to get promoted. Did I want to establish myself as an expert in the field? No, but I wanted to be well respected among my colleagues in my state and so forth. To learn about an area you want to become familiar with? Yep, I've done that many times through writing, through reading, and so forth. Okay, you want to ask yourself then, if you have limited writing experience, can you start small and build on it? So one of the ways that people often start out, you know, if they have little experience in writing when they come into librarianship, is they'll write book reviews, they'll do anything that's small like that, letters to the editor, a newsletter, and build up their skills that way and their confidence. And always remember that it's easiest as a beginning writer, I think any kind of writer, is to write about what you know. If you write about what you know, it's interesting, it's relevant, it's topical, it's other people like to read it. Okay, the editorial process. The editorial process is how you take your article from the time you write it, research it, to the time it's published. Okay, it's good to know what all these terms mean too. You have the publisher, it's a company or person engaged in publishing periodicals, books, and so forth. The editor is the person who edits written material for publication. The editorial board is an advisory board that may suggest policy and editorial changes for a journal or book series. A blind reviewer, a reviewer who evaluates a manuscript from which the contact information has been removed. Copy editor, a person who prepares copy for printing, and so forth. So I just have 1, 2, 3, I have about 5 different terms that are used for individuals who work in publishing, and as you can see, they're totally specific to editing, right? These are jobs that are not found in other professions, I don't think. So it's good to know which each of these categories, these kinds of people do.
Marta, if you allow me just before moving, if you go back a little bit for for the previous slides, I think. Okay. So I need just, because we have some questions, I know that we will move it to the end of the presentation, but I think this is very important because many questions came to us asking about how to join editorial board for these distinguished journals. I know that it's early, but I think it's important just to know the role here and how to be one of those, for sure, for the academics and professors here in the Arab region if they found themselves capable enough to do it. So could you just enlighten us about this, please?
Right. Okay. So as far as I know, all the boards that I have served on, I have been invited to serve on them. I did not lobby for them to serve on them. So I think the thing is, it really has to do with you, because you're scholars, you're writers, you're intellectuals. Your work is what's going to sell your services to an editorial board. Editorial boards do different kinds of things. Sometimes they just get together to talk about the direction of the journal, what they feel how it should change, how it should not change, what are the subscriptions like, all those things. They'll get together maybe once or twice a year and have like at a conference and talk about it, the board's concerns that way. Some editorial boards, the people who serve on them are actually peer reviewers. So they do a lot of the work for the actual editor and going and reading through manuscripts, evaluating them, sometimes even copying them. I think that if you want to be on an editorial board, if you have in mind an editorial board that you would like to serve on, it's the best thing to do would be to network with the editor, with people who are associated with that journal, to write an article for a particular journal. I mean, all those things are ways of making yourself known to the current editorial board. So now we're talking about how you get published, right? So an editor receives journal submissions in a variety of ways. The three most common are: the editor puts out a call for a special issue of the journal, and the writer then gives a proposal or a full-length article geared to the particular theme. Why does an editor do that? Well, if I were writing something right now, organizing a special issue, I would do it on COVID-19 and the effect that it's had on the library community, because that's an issue that's really real, that's affected us tremendously. I might then go and do a different, or I might do an issue where I did one on the effects of epidemics on librarianship over a period of time. So a lot of times a special issue of a journal is sparked by something that happens. And therefore, many times the editor will know who he or she wants to go and to get to sign on to write for it, but there usually is other slots available for writers who want to contribute. This is, I think, a very good way of getting published. If you know something about a particular field, area, certainly approach the editor directly. Or you might tell the editor you'd like to do a special issue yourself. If you have the credentials, you can go do that. The second one is that editor may commission work directly from an author. Okay, so we were just talking about that. Or the writer may approach an editor about a topic or submit a manuscript without any previous contact. This is called a cold submission. So let's say I wrote something that I felt was really valuable to a particular journal. I would send it in myself with a recommendation that the editor take a look at it and see what he or she feels about it. But again, there are these three types. You have a special issue, you have work commissioned, and you have a cold submission. Those are basically the three types of submission process. Okay, you're preparing to submit your article. Read the guidelines for submissions. On the web, every journal has extensive information about what style guide they use, what are the the organizational scheme of the articles, what kind of articles they're looking for. I mean, everything. Well, do you use footnotes or endnotes? So go and take a look. Just spend 15 minutes and go through what the requirements are for preparing the manuscript for submission. I guarantee it's well worth their time, because if you have a manuscript that is, maybe it's fantastic, but you have spelling errors, you've done the citations wrong, the bibliography wrong, the editor may feel, you know, I'd love this, but for me to do the work needed to get it up to snuff, I don't have the time for it, and he'll just get rid of it. Not get rid of it, he'll return it. Another thing you want to do is address the editor formally. Dear Mr., Ms., Mrs., Doctor, not hi. I've seen that from library school students going and addressing a publisher as hi in an email when they're submitting something. Never do that. Okay, check spelling and grammar. In the U.S. publications, we use U.S., not British forms of many words. For example, we'll analyze with a Z, and not, well, this is wrong, and not analyze with an S. So you want to go and, if you're submitting to a British publication, do their British spelling the way that they do, and if American one to an American, because it stands out to a native speaker. And why get yourself in a, potential problem with that for no reason? Okay, question an editor asks, what is the word count of your piece? Okay, if you have written something that is 50 or 60 pages long and the editor tells you in his, notes from the editor that the articles that are accepted are 20 to 23 pages long, you are not going to have your article published most likely, and it will just not be looked at. So look at the page count, it's very important. Is the topic appropriate for the journal? If you are submitting to our library school student to a journal published by a library school, whatever, and you put in your article about library interns, that probably would be an excellent choice. If you're the library school intern doing a library school student doing an article on internships, and you do it into a very top archival journal, it's not going to get published because it's not appropriate for it. Same thing with the style of writing. Is it appropriate for the journal? Has a similar article run recently? We talked about that a bit. If you've had the same article in a journal, they're similar, it's not going to get published. So go take a look at the journals, see what's run there for the past few issues. So this is pretty much a summary of what we were talking about. Take a look again at the table of contents of journals that you'd like to submit to. Can you engage in a dialogue with a controversial article that is recently run? Editors want to publish intelligent, well-written articles that provide different points of view about topical issues. Can you provide an international perspective on a major event shaping the profession? Data preservation, for example. Can you provide information of a new form of library service unique to your library or region? Okay, these are common problems with international submissions to U.S. journals. The topic is out of date. The author doesn't understand the difference between a literature review and a bibliography. There's not enough background information or context, grammatical and other errors, an academic exercise that was just written to show that it could be written. There's no spark or life or really interest in it. It does not fit the scope of the journal. So I have here at the bottom things that I want to learn from your article. Tell me something new. Help me learn. Explain to me why your experience is unique. All those are terrific. That's why I would like to read your article. Tell me something new. Tell me how your experience is unique. Help me learn. How to negotiate. We'll go through this rather quickly, Dr. Abdullah. So let's go on to the next slide. When you're signing a publishing contract, you want to read it very carefully. The agreement is legally binding. It's your right. You are allowed to modify the agreement. They may not accept it, but you may cross out anything you don't like and put something different in. Maintain your rights to your article. At least get the right that you can place a preprint in your institution's e-repository. Negotiate to get all rights to your articles returned after a specific period and decide whether green gold access is right for you. I'll tell you how I learned to do a contract. I had a colleague who was very good at contracts, and I said to him, well, what do you think about this? And he said, oh, no. So he crossed out various things. For example, that I had to pay for a proofreader or this or that, and he got me a much better contract. And that's just somebody taking the time and confidence to go and do that so that it was better for me. Now I try to do that myself.
If you allow me to come here also, I think we need you to give more about the the way that in your journal specific you negotiate, because from my point of view, and I think here in the region, it's not some sort of negotiation more than you submit and then you wait for acceptance or wait for some comments about this one. So do you think that this is something common about negotiating about your article when you publish it, or are you talking here about book if you be in specific? You got my
I'm
point?
talking about journal articles, but when I'm talking about a book too, I mean, I work for I'm the acquisitions editor. So I find the works for the Librarian Information Technology Association book series. And so I don't write the contracts, but I go and see what the contracts are. And it's just amazing the variety of contracts that exist. Some people want to have a year to be able to write the books. Other people can do it in 3 months. Some of them want to have a certain percentage from the sales. I mean, they're all over the map, but differing. I think with a journal article, the most important thing is that you can maintain some kind of rights to it, right? Because it's a valuable commodity and you want to be able to reuse it. So you want to at least be able to have it as a preprint in your e-repository, be able to share it with people, or something like that. Or you're right though, I mean, the things that I'm talking about, a lot of them have to do more with books, but I just have been struck by the variety of contracts that I have seen that I never would have guessed. I thought every contract was just basically like a boilerplate, but no. If you take the effort and you have the negotiating skill, you can change the contract. Okay, you'll get this in your packet, contract examples. So these are all definitions. Accepted manuscript, what does that mean? The manuscript of an article that has been accepted for publication, commercial use, and so forth. So you can go at home and just go through some of these terms yourself, and just become familiar with them. Okay, again, a contract example, and the author's right include the right to use a preprint, an accepted manuscript, published journal article for personal use, internal institutional use, and scholarly sharing. So these are all things that you want to, we're talking about a journal article now, that you have the right to use a preprint. You can publish it for personal use, right, on your website, wherever. You can share it within the institution with other people's, and you can share it with scholars. Very important, because that's why we write, right? Because we're writing scholarly literature. We're writing to communicate and share our ideas with others. And I think it's critical that we're actually moving towards an open access environment. I think it's going to be excellent. Okay, we've come to the end of our presentation. What I want to encourage you to do is to work on your article or research paper. You're welcome to work on a new topic based on the ideas we talked about today, or you can do something that you can work on a new topic based on what we talked. So we talked about a lot of different types of articles, topics, and so forth. So go ahead and try out some of these things just to see, just even an organizational structure that you would want. Don't be afraid to share your ideas with your colleagues. You will never lose your expertise and passion for your subject. And I'd like to emphasize that again. Don't be afraid to share your ideas with your colleagues. You will never lose your experience, expertise, and passion for your subject. So it's up to you to share and for others to receive, to listen. Thank you very much. Okay, are there any questions?
Thank you, Professor Marta. I think the time has run very, very fast with you, and then I think it's very important just to have the question, because this is the flavor of any successful workshop. I tried as much as I can just to summarize, because we have many questions. So I try to classify according to the topic. But if you allow me, just I will give a statement in Arabic just to invite the attendees if there is someone has his question in Arabic, so he's welcoming. سادة الحضور طبعا مرة أخرى أنا متعمد إن احنا نقدم هذه الورشة بلغتها الأصلية بلغة الخبيرة بدون أي ترجمات. وكان هناك تحدي ان كثير من الحضور او بعض الحضور كان هيطالب بفكره الترجمه، والبعض الاخر اتصور من الفائده التي سوف تعود عليه هو ان يعيش تجربه التواصل مع تشيف اديتور او رئيس التحرير في مجله ذات الثقل، ويدرب نفسه على فكره الكوميونيكيشن وطرح التساؤلات، وايضا يعرف كيف ماذا يحدث في المطبخ الداخلي في هذه المجلات والمعايير التي وبالتالي المحتوى كاملا ان شاء الله سيتم عرضه ورفعه على الموقع الأكاديمية وقناتها على اليوتيوب. ثانيا الأسئلة زي ما قلت من قليل هي الأهم ولا تقل أهمية للحضور، لأن هي التي تعبر عن البين أو ما يخامرهم. فنبدأ الآن بطرح هذه التساؤلات اللي تم تجميعها، واستسمحكم في انها سوف اطرحها ولن اترجم الاجابه، ولكن ايضا سنترك هذا لمن طرح الاسئله. Okay, Professor Marta, first of all, I think from the question that I try to summarize as much as I can, because as I said, it's many questions. They talking about this list that you collected for the hot topic that they need to look at it and then focus it if they need to write about it. What is the source that they can follow to have up-to-date list about this topic? If there is sources there?
About all topics on the list or just one particular topic that they like?
Both of them. What is the up-to-date topic? What is the new trends? How they can follow it? What is the source they can check from time to time? And if they need just specific topic to focus on it.
Okay, well, something like college and research libraries news, that's a feature that they have frequently in there. So if you know a journal that what international, national, that focuses on that as one of their columns, that's what you can certainly do to go and see what's happening. You can go and look at also in magazines, you know, I'm talking about things that are more current, something like, I'm talking about our environment, like the American libraries. They will have all these topics that they're talking about because they're a magazine. Magazine deals with more like trends, right? I think what I would do in my databases that our library subscribes to, I would go in just with keywords and find things that are come up. I would, the old-fashioned way, I would go also through the articles and look at the bibliography. You know, I would do a variety of things, and I would talk with, I would look at what are the topics of conferences. What are the papers? Those are, again, a topical, new, you know, more newer kind of things that are going on. Definitely conferences.
Okay, thank you. There is other question about that spelling mistakes, and you know that it's not a mother tongue for the people or researcher in the Arab region. So if the spelling mistakes or some problem for the structuring the article could affect about accepting this article from the international journals?
You're talking, I didn't understand your question. I didn't.
Which is about that the spelling mistakes, the type of mistakes that could be found in articles submitted to this international. Do you think that this could affect accepted it?
Yes, it could. Because I know that editors,
or
you know.
it at all, or maybe they will send it back and asking for correction.
Well, I mean, I think first of all, there's no reason why you can do spell check. I mean, just with things that are ordinary words, so just to go through that and clean it up. But I think if the trouble really is the grammar, because the grammar in different languages is different from each other, right? So if you have an article that is written by somebody that doesn't know English, somebody has to go and make it turn into an English language article. And so I know myself that I have sent, you know, manuscripts back to the author, and they have found somebody who then goes and fixes it up, you know, makes it more grammatically correct. So I think what I would do is, if I had the knowledge of the context, So I would simply ask another person, like an American, if it were an American journal who was there living in, you know, somewhere, who was there for another reason, pay them a certain amount of money just to go through it. I think that would save, that would actually make the article more likely to be accepted.
Okay, thank you. There is some question related to, I think, yes, they need to know more about the Q1 and Q2 classification for the journal. If you just give more enlightenment about it, please.
Okay, well, from what I understand about that is that there are 4, and perhaps you can join me with this, Dr. Abdallah, that there are 4 categories that you have, one which is almost like getting a grade in school. So you have the A, B, C, and D papers, right? But what they're doing is that they're trying to make the criteria for it more transparent. So you don't have ways of puffing up the citations to make it better than it actually is. So they look at it by, journals will be looked at in different ways, but basically it's the topic, how many articles how people are reading the articles. It's not how many people are citing them so much as it is what is the general impact of articles on a particular discipline. Can you add to that, Dr. Abdallah?
Yes, I think because we have other questions related to that about the list of this type of journal, from where we can find it, or what is the source we can knock its door to see this Q1 and Q2 journals.
To do, I mean, you know, there are actual websites. I included the like Elsevier. They have a whole website, web presence about those journals. So you can go to something like that, like for Elsevier or Scopus, and take a look at what they have to say. That would, and they also have their lists of journals and their ranking and so forth. So I think that would probably be I would do a search for Scopus.
Yes.
And I would do one for Elsevier plus Q1, you know, Q2, and it will come up.
Okay, there is a very nice question about, is it prohibited just to send the same article to different or many journals? I can tell that this is with the following for each journal rules or criteria. But the question is it prohibited?
Well, it's not prohibited, but it makes editors really mad, because you're supposed to, and they're actually, most of the journals, I think, have a statement saying that they would like to look at your article just by, they don't want you to send it out to 20 different journals. And if you have two publishers that are in competition over running a particular article, and they find out that they are in competition with each other, most likely they will say that they won't accept it at all. Yeah. So I think, is that your impression too, Dr. Abdallah?
Yeah, sure. Especially, I think it's an ethical way. Okay, there is one other question related to librarian, that we do have the same respect for the librarian, researcher, academics, because we all in the same boat in the library field. He said that I have a lot of achievements and initiative in my library, and I need to publish this in journals. Maybe he needed to find a channel just to express his potential in a journal. So what do you advise him?
Well, I advise him, he sounds like a very outgoing, very persistent person. That's a good qualities to have if you're going to get published. I think what I would do is I would write down a list of all the things that he's working on that is of interest to him. I mean, it sounds like he's involved in many different kinds of projects. And then I would try to take a look and see whether those projects belong to a particular field or a particular kind of expertise. And from there, I would go and find journals that seem reasonable. I would also think of doing things like, if I were at the beginning of my career, just do something like we were talking about just now, putting together a list of resources on a particular topic, a bibliography, something like that, which you could even publish yourself or have in your e-repository or something. You know, part of publishing is actually doing the writing, and you have the object, the article, the book published. But another part of it, for him, if he wants to be promoted, I guess that's part of it, is that you want to create kind of a splash about yourself. So if you can get your work published in a blog, not published, but put in a blog, Twitter, something where it's creating some excitement about your work, I would do that too, especially as a young person. Why not?
Very good. Okay. I think related to that, I can get the question in a way that they need advice.
Yeah.
So I think there is a question related to one of the attendees already submitted his paper to a journal, and he did mention what is the name of the journal because this is related to the second part. Now the status of his paper is pending decision. He asked, does that mean his paper is rejected, or because I think he already emailed the journal to know what is going on. So pending decision, what do you explain this?
Okay, honestly, what I think is that the editor has too much work right now, and for him, he cannot get to that particular article, so he's putting pending because it's very vague, and that will give him time to do that. Or maybe he has his reviewers, the ones who were supposed to have read the article a month ago, and they did not read the article, so now he has to find 2 more reviewers. I mean, I think pending is a very generous way of covering up a lot of problems. Who knows what they are? So I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't take that one way or the other.
And I think that, as they said, the higher the reputation of the journal, the longer the queue of publishing on it, right?
Right, that's correct.
You advise him to be more patient and still have the hope. Okay, there is another question related to, you told us about what you have to do as advice. So what do you think to tell us about what not to do for avoid rejecting? This is, I think you mentioned it during the presentation, but I think many questions come to that. What is the main thing that could affect the acceptance?
Okay, the main thing that acceptance is not doing the work to figure out what the journal wants that you're submitting to. So again, I mentioned that if you have an article about library interns and you submit it to a journal about serial review, why on earth would they accept that particular article? But many people do, some people do. They just don't think about that there's a connection between what they wrote and the actual where they should publish it. Then again, what I said, if you've written an article, no matter how fantastic it is, and they have just published last month the same, basically the same article, they're not going to accept it. Do you see what I'm saying? Just try to eliminate right from the start the things that would be most discouraging for you, and work from it that way. Grammatical errors, I think at least in English, it's critical that you do something that's professional, because if you don't write it professionally, then they'll wonder about your data. If they feel that you can't write in English, how do they know whether your data is correct? If you're not even taking the time to go and correct spelling mistakes, let's say.
Perfect. There is another question related to the language. So from your experience and also for the journal that you already joined as a chief editor and one of the member of the board of editing, is their journal accept article or paper in Arabic, even it's English or international journal? I think he mentioned, or he need to say that if I have an article and it's in Arabic language, is the possibility to publish it in this Q1 or Q2 journals, even they are most of the article there in English?
Well, I mean, you have to think about the article, but what is the language of the journal? Is the language French? Is it German? Is it English? If I were submitting an article to a German library magazine journal, they would not look at it if I sent it in English. I'd have to translate it into German. So I think that's what he's saying, that he has to go and find somebody to do the translation for him. And I think I would try to find, at least in the US, I would go to a school or university and find either the student who knew that language, who was foreign, or somebody who was studying, let's say, English in college, in university, and pay them a certain amount of money to have them do it right. I think myself, from knowing what prejudice in a way there is against articles that are not done, you know, right, in correct English and so forth, you increase your chances immensely. So why not do that?
Okay, maybe he needs just to focus on his language somehow and trying to find, because there is here in the region some journals accepting in different language, Arabic,
Oh, wow.
Germany, or so this is you think about it. Okay, let's move to the next question. It's related about, and okay, she is asking about the possibility to publish part of her thesis as an article.
I think it depends on the discipline. Many fields, like in social sciences, which are library sciences, is they deliberately do their thesis, their dissertation, let's say, in the form of chapters, which are really articles. So you can publish 1, 2, 3, and 4, you know, and one after the other. And I don't think there's anything wrong with publishing part of your dissertation before it's finished. I think that's fine. I think I would just ask, just to make sure that I was clear that I was not breaking any rule, that you know, my dissertation could not have been published before. That would be one problem I would see. Maybe there's a rule in the school saying that you cannot put in your dissertation published sources, you know, something you've published before. So I would check and see whether that's what the administration says.
Perfect. There is another question here. I found hundreds of questions coming after each other. We go back now here in this question to Q1, Q2, and the difference between this type of journal and the highly impact factor journal. I think you mentioned, but it's good just to give some light on it.
Well, I think the Q1 and Q2, I mean, I think that's one of the things they're judged up by, isn't it? That they're high impact?
Yeah,
right.
That's what they need to ask. Is it, suppose once they are in the classification of Q1 and Q2, that means that they are high, with high impact factor.
Yeah, that's right.
Very good. Okay. We have here a question about if I already published one of these, one of my journal, because it's in Arabic, one of my paper to a specific journal, am I allowed to republish it again in my website?
You have to look at the contract that you made when you signed your agreement with the publisher. I think if the publisher says no, you go back to him and say, why not? You know, I think you should be able to do that. And I would, but first I would look and see what the contract says that you signed.
Okay. Okay, another question, question about how the journal support the real author or the original author.
Well, first of all, they plagiarized it and they put it in another journal, I'm assuming, not in the same journal. Mm-hmm. So it would have to come from that other journal. The other journal would have to write a retraction saying this was plagiarized, or we were removing it because it did not follow our rules. And then they would remove it probably from the database, the databases that had been put at, and maybe do a notice. So the person supporting you would not be your editor. It would be the editor of the other journal. I mean, they're the ones that would have to come forward and say that, you know, that this writer's plagiarized from you, you know, and we think it's wrong, blah, blah, blah. That's what I would do. I think it has to come from the other publisher, yes. The retraction and the apology.
Yeah. And the end part of this art, is it okay also if it is internationally? He's talking about that if this happened, I think, within his country, so he can deal with it. But he's talking about that if it is international. I think the same if you can communicate the other journal, right, Marta?
Yeah, I think so. And I would write the publisher, the editor-in-chief, I would write the head of the, like Elsevier or whoever, and I would, you know, CC them and say, this is not acceptable. My article was stolen, blah, blah, blah. You know, go and make a big fuss about it. I mean, it was taken away from you. It's your
right,
your work, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Okay. Here another. Thank you very much for this great. Okay. How can we protect the work? He said the protection that this is related to the previous question when we submit it or share with colleagues. Okay. Is there any advice? I will leave you and then comment at the end after you talking, Marta.
Okay.
So he found that me and you just encourage all the attendees and all researchers to share their ideas and this stuff. So he is afraid, or some of the people just afraid about losing the idea or losing this one. So please comment on this.
Well, I personally believe that all knowledge should be shared. And I think that when you're writing work, you know, an article, you have your own perspective on things. And the way that we could be writing about the same thing, Dr. Abdallah, you and I, but the way that I write and the way that you write are so very different, and our focus is very different, is that we would not come up with the same article. If maybe what I would do, I mean, has the gentleman had something happen to him where or is this just a fear? That's another thing I would like to know.
Very good. If I can now comment on that, I think the idea will be available for everyone. Sharing the idea maybe enrich the idea itself. But if you're talking about just to having the idea and developing the other one, if we say that I'm sharing with him his article, I think it's still, I am at the original owner for the idea, if I can say like that, and share to the other one. I'm still having my qualification to write about this idea, the approach, the methodology, the tools. I'm still having my own name and characteristics as a researcher. So even if someone else writes about this idea, I think he will have his own qualification and capability. So, and this is how the knowledge and science grow. So I think by just changing the ideas, and then everyone will look to the same, as we call it, the same antique or the same image from different angle. So I think we still need to have more encouragement on sharing this one, because I think sharing will enrich my idea and the other idea, and everyone can write about it from his point of view and based on his qualification. Am I right somehow?
Yeah, for sure. That's an excellent response.
Yeah. There is another question about training the reviewer. I like this question because he asking about that. Is there any training courses or organizations that give training for reviewer?
That's a good question. I don't know of any. I think the way that you learn to do that is by reviewing yourself. You learn it as trial and error. One of the things that's been very interesting for me being an editor is I see that the work that people put into reviews and the amount of effort they put in is just amazing. I mean, if you have a good reviewer, it's gold. I mean, it's so helpful for the editor. So schools, you know, I guess what I would do is maybe try to find, let's say, a teacher of yours, a library school teacher who does some kind of editing or and write one just as a try for that person and say, could you critique this? Could you tell me what I did right with this or how it could be improved? I mean, you could try that.
Yeah, I'll wait until you finish because actually that's what we're thinking about your excellent workshop here. We'll think just to have you again, just to dedicate it to giving advice for the reviewer. So now we're talking for the researcher in general, and now we can do another round for the reviewer, how to develop your qualification as a reviewer, what you have to do, and for sure I think the first thing you have to be a very, very good writer and researcher, then you can move on to be a reviewer and read a lot of papers. Here we have another question about if I already submit my paper or article and during the processes, I found another article having the same results. What I have to do?
Okay, so what does it mean by it has the same results?
I think he's talking about that once I submit my piece of paper or the manuscript, and it takes, as you said, sometimes it takes more than 1 month. During this one, he's reviewing the lit review and see the other, and he found that there is other article already published, and it has many of the results he already come out, especially if you're talking about very specific topic.
Well, I mean, is he afraid that somebody stole his work?
No, I think he's just, some idea, like if you have the same idea and working with the same methodology, it happens just to having come out with the same or more than 80% of the outcomes. So what he's supposed to do, because he already submitted to the journal.
Well, I think I would take it away. I would write the editor and say, I'm going to withdraw my article because for some reason. If I was not going to submit it to him again, I would just withdraw it without making any kind of fuss. Just say, I'm sorry, I have to withdraw this. Then you don't get involved into, you know, any kind of unpleasant discussion. I guess if he wanted to submit it to him again, you could say, editor, I was just amazed, and when I was reading the latest issue of such and such journal, I saw an article that really resembles mine. It's very close, and I'm going to withdraw. You could say I'm going to withdraw it and resubmit it. So then what I would do is I would take your article, you've obviously done a lot of work, and try to figure out how you can reassemble it the way that Dr. Abdullah was talking, you know, where you can have two things that are similar, but they're very different at the same time. And I would try to think about how I could restructure the article so it has a different feel to it, maybe a different conclusion, a different focus.
Perfect. Yeah. I think I have some compromise solution. I don't know if it's accepted from some journal, for example, your journal. During the process, can I just sending an email and say that the part of the lit review and also the conclusion or the results, I have some edit on it. So is it acceptable just to send an email like that, and then I can refresh my manuscript and send it again without just starting from the square one?
I think it would make the editor very suspicious why you would be doing that. And I think I would try to explain to him saying, you know, something or other, either, you know, just do it in a way that makes it sound very honest and open. And, you know, we had a similar focus, and I did not realize that till I read the paper. So now I'm doing, you know, this again. And I would put the paper that you had was similar to yours with the citation, if there was a DOI, you know, so that the editor could go and look at the paper, right? So that you're being totally honest and above board, right? Okay. Go take a look at it. This is what happened. I'm redoing it, and I will send you a new version.
Asking about that, the transparency of the editors, the transparency of the office, the board itself. If he sends something and they just reject it, he feels that maybe this is supposed to be a little bit not the subjective or the way that he expects to accept it.
Well, I mean, some people are really, they're not very polite. And to me, that sounds like a person that is very rushed in time, is probably working on many different things, and he just said reject without doing what he should have done as a good editor, which was explain, you know, what some of the problems were, encourage the writer, and so forth. So I would just put it down on his bad kind of manners. That's what I would do.
And what you advise to the researcher in this case, if he received this rejection, do you think that he supposed to reply on this, try to asking for more details? You don't?
No, I do not. I would go directly to another publisher. There are plenty of publishers. And I would just take it away from them and say, it's your loss.
This is from my side. I have a question about this. How can we shorten the period of the process of sending and having the letter? Because this is part of the title, from the manuscript until the acceptance letter. So how?
Well, you know, part of it is
or some action the researcher can do it to shorten the period of time, as you said, that 1 month or 1.5 months, long queue.
Well, I mean, I think there are different things involved. First of all, you want to submit to a peer review journal. And a peer review journal has to have people who know something about your article review it, right? So right away, it's not something that the decision is not made by one man or one woman, the editor. It's made in a collaborative way. So when I get an article that's submitted, I have to find a peer reviewer or two. I always have to find two. And I approach them about it first. And I have to wait. I have to give them a couple of weeks at least, right? I can't say, tell me tomorrow. They have their own lives. Yes. So I'll say, would you be willing to review this through 3 weeks from now, right? We're already now up to 5 weeks, right? The 2 that I took to go and find the peer reviewers, the 5, 3 weeks that they have to return it. And they may come right back and say, no, I'm afraid I can't do that. I'm very busy right now. I have to pass. So then I have to find another peer reviewer, another couple weeks. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's the process of peer review that just takes forever, and then I have to edit it. It has to go to the typesetter. If they did a bad job typesetting it, it has to be corrected. So the only way I think to really get around that is to just put things up on the web without having any peer review at all. But then you wouldn't have our system of publishing, right?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think, as I told you, that there is a question. The last question, it's about one of the attendees asking how I can submit my paper to your journal, Professor Marta, and then find that it's way. So I don't know. So, but
well, that would be great if you submitted it to my journal. It's called the Journal of Archival Organization. And you can go. I don't have right here the email, but the web address. But if you just do a Google for it, it will come up, and then it will tell you how you submit the article. I'd be delighted to read it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Very good. Thank you so much. I know that there is a lot of questions, but we're trying to stick to the time. I know that we put this 2 hours as a fixed time, but it depends about the workshop, about the subject. So I would like to thank you again, Professor Marta. I would like to thank you, بشكر جميع الحضور. And we will do our best to have a similar workshop. Thank you again, and I leave the last word for you, Professor Marta, to wrap up this workshop.
Well, first of all, Dr. Abdallah, thank you so much. What a treat to have been here and to work with you and your colleagues, and also to hear all these very interesting questions. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody again. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and keep writing.
Thank you, Marta, again. شكرا جزيلا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.